I'm Michael Bungay Stania. On the show today, we are digging deep into three powerful things. One is the framework that is the deepest, most powerful framework I know to understand the relationships you build with others. Number two, the question that is the heart of building not just powerful working relationships, but powerful loving relationships with the people with whom you work. And number three, we're talking about the drama triangle, the triangle that explains all the dysfunctional relationships you've ever had and how to get out of it.
Welcome back to part two of our delicious conversation with MBS, Michael Bungay Stania. Now, he is, of course, very well known for his book, The Coaching Habit, which has over 1 million copies sold, 1.2 million, I think he said, and then there's over 10,000 five-star reviews on Amazon. It's the best-selling coaching book of all time. He's also here today to dive into, this is part two, so to dive into his most recent book, How to Work with, quote, Almost Anyone, which shows us how to build the best possible relationships with the key people at work. And we were talking about in part one, if you didn't get to part one, please click on that. Honestly, there's a lot of gems. And it really talks to you a bit about how Michael got here. And it's a fascinating exploration of the human being that's brought us to this exploration of how to be with other human beings. I'm not going to tell you too much about it. You can go back and listen to part one, take notes, and I encourage you to do the same. Let's jump back into this conversation because we've been talking about this book, How to Work with Almost Anyone, and we've sort of talked about how it's come about and why it's so needed, but now we want to sort of dive into a bit more of the practicalities of it. And the book is, as I said, is very reasonable and is based on 5 questions for building the best possible relationships. So let's go there, Michael. Let's talk about these 5 questions because it's, of course, you know, your background is in the coaching, which is a questions-based process. But let's talk about what those 5 questions are and the importance of shutting up and listening.
Well, let's frame what a BPR is, a best possible relationship, because once you get that, you're going to understand the power of these 5 questions.
Fabulous.
So the key insight is our happiness and our success is so dependent on our working relationships, and yet most of the time we just cross our fingers and we hope for the best. But what if you could more actively shape those working relationships so they could be the best version of that relationship? In other words, a BPR, best possible relationship.
Yes.
Obviously, not every working relationship is going to be unicorns dancing through the fields, burping up rainbows. You know, we've got to work with the whole mix of humanity. But every working relationship, the great, the good, and even the bad, can be a version of the best version of what that is. So what's a BPR? It's a good term, but what does it actually mean? Well, I think there are 3 core attributes to the BPR. And once you understand those core attributes, you understand the 5 questions that can drive the conversation to help shape that.
Beautiful.
So the 3 attributes are a relationship needs to be safe and vital and repairable.
Safe, vital, repairable. Okay. I don't know how I'm supposed to say that word, but the snowflake stuff around safe, right? Because it's like, oh, can I look sideways?
Well, I get that totally. So I think, 10 years ago or more, Amy Edmondson, Harvard Business School professor, really introduced this idea of psychological safety.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really clear from research from Google and others that for people to flourish, they need to be safe.
Yes.
And so what you're looking to do is effectively remove fear from people's, the sense that I can't say this or do this because of the consequence. And in a broader sense, encourage people to say, you can show up as the person you are at work. Now, like you, I think there's a way that psychological safety, if that's all that there is, can become overplayed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also not enough. I've been in working relationships that have been very safe and they've been slightly boring. I'm like, it's fine, it's comfortable enough, but I feel like I'm stuck in a warm lagoon, and that's okay for a little while, but it's not enough for my life. So the second attribute is vital. And by vital, I don't mean just essential, although that's good. I mean full of life. So here we're talking about psychological bravery, psychological safety, psychological bravery. And you want these two to be in tension, in a dance with each other.
Beautiful.
So it's that ability to push and to challenge and to step out to the edge and be uncomfortable and to fail and to take risks and to kind of push on each other and push on yourselves. And you need both. And that pendulum that swings, too much risk, too much safety. Have we been in a time of too much safety? Perhaps. But I certainly think that in any best working relationship, you've got that right balance, which is like, I feel safe with you, but I also feel that we can push each other. And then the third of the core attributes is repairability. Now, to research this, I read into all of the really big names, the great thinkers about kind of intimate relationships. People like Esther Perel and Terry Real and Dan Siegel, John Gottman, all these people who made their name by going, let us teach you what makes romantic relationships flourish. And if you look for something that goes across all of these writers, it's this. Relationships that get repaired are the ones that last longer. And then part 2 to their insight, most of us suck at repairing relationships. Most of us, when something gets ripped, when the fabric gets torn a little bit, most of us run away, hide, get resentful, be quiet about it. And this idea of being the person who can repair the relationship, because when it's safe and when it's vital, things will go off the rails. They always do.
Of course.
Repairability is that third element that allows you to kind of go, this keeps this relationship alive and healthy and lasting longer.
So I love all three of those and fully agree with them. And you may be going to go there in a moment, but I just want to jump in for a moment with this. Repairability is now where we've got the ego involved because, well, why should I repair it? You're the one who did that, or he or she is the one who did that. So it's not on me. I need you to apologize to me. And now my ego's involved and I'm taking a relief on this relationship.
We were talking about Martin Buber before and what a powerful framework the I yet, I thou way of seeing the world is. Do you know the Karpman drama triangle? Have you come across that in your work?
Don't think so.
Oh, I think you're going to love this. Oh, I am so excited because I feel like you know a lot. So when I can come across a gem that you may not have stumbled over before, it's wonderful. So the Karpman drama triangle is derived from the therapeutic model transactional analysis. I use slightly different language. I use persecutor, victim, rescuer.
Yes.
So TA is the language, transactional analysis, that gives us adult-to-adult relationships and parent-child relationships. Kind of useful in a therapeutic setting, not useful in a work setting at all. It's not helpful to go to your boss going, I think we have a parent-child relationship. That's weird. Drama triangle. It definitely might be true. But the drama triangle says, look, when relationships get out of sync, get dysfunctional, these three different roles play out. There's the victim. You can guess what somebody playing the victim role looks like. There's the persecutor. You can guess what somebody playing the persecutor role looks like. And then there's the rescuer. You can guess what that person looks like. The rescuer sounds slightly better than the other two, but it is as equally dysfunctional as those other two. And in fact, I like the term you used, the martyr term. So you can think of this as victim, persecutor, martyr. When the relationship gets damaged, in other words, when there's a moment where repair is required, most of us will fall into one of those three different roles. So one of them is the victim role, which is like, see, it's so unfair. Nobody cares about me. I'm always being picked on. I'll just sit here and complain and moan about it. The persecutor is when you're like, I'm just going to double down on the attack. I'm just going to keep piling in and kind of landing hammer blows. Then the martyr or the rescuer is the person who goes, no, it's all me. I'm so wrong. It's all my fault. And without boundaries, take the blame and kind of self-sacrifice around that.
Right.
None of those actually are particularly helpful in the long term. Actually, often not in the short term either. So this idea of repairability, I love that you brought this up, which is, so what does it take for you to be the person who goes, how do I fix this?
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is going, what role am I currently playing in the drama triangle? And how might I get out of the drama triangle? And here's the connection back to part one. So the people who haven't listened to part one yet, you need to go back and listen, which is the thing that really shifts you out of the drama triangle is curiosity. Curiosity about yourself. What am I doing? How am I behaving? Why am I behaving like this? I hate it when I behave like this. So why am I doing it again? and curiosity as to what's going on for that other person, what's going on the other side. And with curiosity, you can pull yourself out of the drama triangle. When you're out of the drama triangle, you're going to have more resources that make it more likely you'll be able to begin the process of repair.
That's really good. And I want to reiterate something in there, if I may, and that is this. If you're in that drama triangle, what I call hero, victim, martyr, if you're in that cycle, as Michael said, you may feel like being the hero is a much better place to be, that you're a better person because of that. They are all equally damaging to a relationship. And by the way, if you're playing one, you play one as a dominant, but you're playing the other two as well. You can't play just one.
That's true.
So if I'm playing the hero, I'm also playing the victim and the martyr. If I'm playing the victim, I'm also trying to be the hero and the martyr. So you can't play one. You play one dominantly, but you can't play one on its own. You go, well, that's just not me. I'm not that. Are you that inside your head? You might not be in the world, but are you in your head? So really think about it, because it's so disempowering. I know that I played that hero rescuer to the max and never perceived myself as the victim, ever, because I was the eldest child, the big achiever, blah, blah, blah. But when I was on my own, oh, poor me, I'm cursed. And I would run all that shit in my head.
Yeah. So
it's really important to stop this. And again, what Michael said is so important. The place to return to is self-curiosity. What am I doing here to do this? And how might I make it better?
Right.
Thank you so much for that, because it's moving out of that ego stance. Because, by the way, those three in that drama triangle are all ego-based.
They're all reactive.
They're all,
you don't really think about it. You just fall into one of those different roles. And all three of those have some very short-term benefits. I play the hero because I feel like I'm the best. I play the victim because it always attracts people trying to save me. I play the rescuer or the martyr because it gives me the sense of self-sacrificing and nobility. So there's always a short-term upside, but there's a price you pay. Each one of those three roles has prizes and punishments, and the punishments always outweigh the prizes.
Mm-hmm.
So learning to notice the drama triangle, because honestly, it is part of your humanity.
Exactly.
To say you will fall into the drama triangle for the rest of your life. But it's how quickly can you notice that you're in the drama triangle? How quickly can you pull yourself out of it? How long can you stay out of it? And then you'll fall back into it again. We all do. Even Dove and I. And look at us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a scrap with my missus and I'm right back there. I might be only there for like 5 minutes or even 30 seconds sometimes, but I go there, and the only difference is, am I willing to stay there? Because my answer is, there's nothing.
That's nicely put.
Except that I get to be right.
Nicely put.
Years ago, we had the saying, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Yeah.
And what it is now is, for me, is do I want to be right or do I want to be in a state of love? I want to be in a state
That's
of
beautiful.
love. This pulls me out of being in a state of love. So in a state of love, I'm curious. I can't be curious. I can't be in a state of love without curiosity. If you're a regular listener to the show, you heard me say this. To me, curiosity is my religion, because if I go to that, I can return to love.
I love that. Dove, I haven't heard it said like that before, but that's really powerful. That reconnects us back to our type of relationships in love in the moment. That's fantastic.
So these are the three
principles of a best possible relationship.
The best possible relationship.
Yeah. But how do you get there? So let's get practical around this.
So reiterate those again, and then take us into 5 questions a little bit.
So try to make every working relationship, your boss, your team, key vendors, key clients, the best version of that relationship, a BPR, best possible relationship. Needs to be safe, needs to be vital, needs to be repairable. So how do you actually do that? Well, you have a keystone conversation. A keystone conversation is when you have a conversation about how you work together before you plunge into the work. And we are almost all very attuned to plunging into the work because it's there, it's urgent, it's busy, it's real, it's a crisis, it's juicy, whatever. But most of us just get into it right away. And one of the things that distinguishes Dove as a podcaster is that before you have an interview with Dove, you have a conversation with him, a pre-conversation where you basically go, how do we make this interview really great? It's actually a keystone conversation where we're like, let's be the best version of each other in this podcast relationship before we get into the podcast. Whereas most podcasters, they're like, great, you're here, let's get into it. And we haven't had a conversation about how do I be a really good guest and how do you be a really good host to do that. And it's one of the ways this is a different podcast. And regular listeners will notice the quality of the relationship. It's because of this keystone conversation, what I would call a keystone conversation that Dov has set up with his guests. I think a keystone conversation has 5 good questions as part of that. And Dov, how about I rattle through those 5 questions?
Thank you.
Helpful? So the amplify question is, what's your best? And I like to think of this as, when do you shine and when do you flow? It's a great place to start because it's all about, let's talk about what good looks like. Dov and I are talking, it's like, Dov, when do you shine and when do you flow as an interviewer? And I can say, let me tell you when I shine and when I flow as a guest. The second question is the steady question, which is, what are your practices and preferences? So this is almost really about going, look, what are the logistics of how we work together? You know, for Dov and I, we'd be talking about, well, we're recording it on this platform. We're using this type of microphone. We're using this type of camera. Our assistants are doing this sort of stuff to make sure that the recordings get set up, all that sort of mechanical stuff. That's important because it's remarkable how many relationships get damaged just by people having a different idea of how the logistics of it all works. The third and the fourth question, and I love these ones, are the good date and the bad date questions. You can tell they're related. The insight behind these questions, Dov, is the patterns from the past will repeat again in the future. So look at the patterns of the past so you can figure some stuff out and you can figure out how that's going to show up in the future. So the good date question is, what can we learn from past successful relationships? I'd be asking you, tell me about the very best guest you've had. Who are they? What do they do? How do they show up? What did they do? What did you do? And then the bad date question is, what can you learn from past frustrating relationships? So I'd be going, Dov, tell me about the podcast guests that were kind of mediocre.
This
kind of sucked a little bit. Yeah. What did you do? How did you contribute to that? What did they do? And that's all helpful information. And then the fifth question, and this ties back to the conversation we were having before, is the repair question, which is, how will we fix it when things go wrong? Because the key insight is that in any ongoing relationship, it'll go off the rails at some stage. So how will we fix it when that moment happens? And the power of that question is really, you're making a joint forward commitment to fixing it when things go wrong.
I want to say this. Edgar Cayce quote from more than 100 years ago was, it's simple, but it's not easy. And this is very simple. These 5 questions are very simple. So when are you at your best? That's an easy one. It's a great place to start because it's very easy to answer. We all want a bit of bragging rights. When are you at your worst? It's a little bit less, right? So the interesting thing is this psychological safety piece is coming into these 5 questions, because I want to backtrack a little bit and say, coming into these 5 questions, I realize these 5 questions, when you've gone through them, will create psychological safety because there will have been reciprocal vulnerability. And reciprocal vulnerability always creates safety and trust. But how do you set that safety before the 5 questions?
So first of all, brilliant insight. I'm just going to double down on what you said, which is part of the power of this conversation is it actually creates a relationship that is safe and vital and repairable.
Yes.
So it's about creating safety around that. But you're quite right that there's a lot of people who come across this work and gone, that sounds good in theory, but in practice, how would I actually get around to doing that? Because it feels unusual and awkward, and it's because it is unusual and awkward. So there's a reason for that. So you're spot on here, though.
You know, using Gottman's work before, they may have an experience with that person where they built up a ton of resentment. And so now I'm spoken, I want to do this, but Susie has really pissed me off for 2 years. And Bob tells me what to do, and I don't really want to hear it from him. And that's been going on for 3 years. And now I don't even have the emotional safety, the psychological safety to step into these 5 questions. So for me, that I feel like that's a piece I jumped over, and I want to pull people back to that in case that's their resistance.
It's really good. In some ways, the most important question to talk about. So it depends a little bit about the status you have in this relationship. Do you have the higher status or the lower status? Are you the boss or are you the subordinate? Is another way of putting that.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's possible for you changes a little bit depending on that. If you're the boss, you have more leeway to say, person's been driving me nuts. Is it worth it or is it not?
Right.
And as a boss, you've got more chance of pulling this off. And as a boss, you've got more chance of kind of role modeling the vulnerability and the openness and the courage you might have to do that. But here's what I would say. The starting point is a reminder that this book is called How to Work with Almost Anyone. So it might be that some of the people you're immediately thinking of are in your almost category.
Mm-hmm.
Then I go, look, obviously there's no guarantee that this is going to work, and there's a degree of personal risk when you're opening up a conversation about how will we best work together. So any choice you make to do it or to not do it has prizes and punishments. If you do it, here's the upside, here's the downside potentially. If you don't do it, here's the upside, here's the downside. So if you don't do it, the upside is nothing's at risk, there's no awkward moment, there's no failure of a conversation. The downside is the dysfunction continues. So it's already a bit messy and mucky and dysfunctional, and you're like, I'll just endure that for longer.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, our happiness and our success is really influenced by the quality of our working relationship. Because when you're working with a bunch of people and these are dysfunctional relationships, that saps your soul. So the question you're really playing with is it worth trying to have these conversations and trying to tip the balance back towards the light? Or do I just keep enduring the misery for a little bit longer? And likewise, if you're like, I'm going to have it, there's potential upside, it gets a bit better. There's potential risk, which is it doesn't work. So partly you're weighing this. And then depending on how safe it feels and how much you're willing to do, there's a way that you can go, so what's the conversation I could have that would feel safe enough?
Mm-hmm.
So, Dov, if I was talking with you, I'd be like, hey, Dov, look, we've been working for a couple of years together. I wonder if you and I could have a quick chat around how we work together, because I've just got an idea or two that might just make things feel a little easier between the two of us. Dov goes, yeah, I guess so. That's what I'm hoping. So I go, Dov, the question I've got is, I notice that when we work together, there's friction, it's a bit of tension. I'm sure you may have felt that too. I feel that for sure. I'd like us to figure out the best way that we can work together, because neither of us are going anywhere. I'm just wondering what the best way of us working together might be. What I'd be curious about is, when you're at your best, what is that? And what can I do to see that and contribute to that? And then I'd like to tell you the same for me as well. And you might just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could say, look, I know we kind of bump heads occasionally, and it's not great, but I think that's just inevitable because of my role and your role, and maybe our different personalities. So I think what I'd be curious about, Dov, is when we bump heads, I'm wondering how we repair this as best as possible so we continue to work together. Let's just say we're going to have conflict, but how do we do this in a way that is most useful and least damaging for the two of us? And so you can see I'm picking certain questions.
Yes.
Depending on how brave I'm feeling and how courageous I'm feeling, to kind of go, is it worth making what Gottman would call a bid? Gottman's idea is you make bids, which are offers, little gifts to the relationship. Sometimes it's a nice word, it's a compliment, it's a touch on the shoulder. It's just a little thing I'm trying to build a bridge back towards you. And so in this context, so what are the bids? What are the little things you might offer out of all of the questions you got there to go, maybe this is worth it?
Yeah, I think that's all very valuable. And I want to just have people get clear that, like I said, simple, not easy, because you, me, we human beings have egos, and our ego will justify us not doing it based on what we've got in the resentment account. So you picked on me in 1984, and I'm carrying that resentment around, and so I'm not going to step forward. And I think you said it beautifully, is that the only solution is curiosity. And sometimes that curiosity is, what don't I know? Like, this person's an a-hole or this person's a biatch, but what don't I know? Right? Because it's part of the whole premise of the book is the quality of your relationships at work impacts the quality of your relationships in the world and your success. That's your happiness. And so what don't I know about this person that if I did, I'd have a greater level of compassion, empathy, understanding, and they might have that with me. And that all this other stuff is an overcompensation for whatever the hell they're going through that I don't know about. And so for that reason, you can make a decision then once you do know to say, I can't work with this person, or, you know what, there's some ground here. This person may never be my best
ground,
but there's some place to step in.
Right. The way I think about it is this. I mean, the people who are listening, if you think of the 3 working relationships you have at the moment that you're finding most frustrating, whether that's a direct report or whether it's a boss or whether it's a colleague or whether it's a client or a customer, and don't imagine that you can turn them into happiness and joy and rainbows, but go, what if I could make these 15% less bad? I think often that's going to take it from unbearable to bearable, to unworkable to workable, to unrecoverable to recoverable. So you're not trying to save the day. You're trying to go, look, we've got to work together. What's the best possible version of our working relationship? And it just might mean a little more grudging respect, a little less triggering, a little less kind of inbuilt drama and drama triangle. Just a little bit can make all the difference. And if there's a call to action in all of this stuff, it's be the person brave enough to maybe start this conversation. Somebody the other day said to me, nobody likes to be the first person to say hello, but everybody loves to be greeted. And I'm like, this is an opportunity for you to be that person to say hello. And it doesn't work all the time. I mean, I wish it did. I wish I could give you a rock-solid guarantee that this will make everything a little bit better. You're going to have times where somebody goes, I don't want to have that conversation with you, or you have the conversation and it doesn't actually make things that much better. But most of the time it will, because for most of those people, it's as miserable for them as it is for you. And everybody would like a little less misery.
Beautifully stated. Personally, I am of the belief that your life is relationships. That's all it is. It's your relationships with yourself. It's your relationships with other people. It's your relationships even with objects. And you and I talked about, before we were recording, about entanglement and quantum physics. And you state it at the back of the book where you talk about entanglement. And that as much as we like to think of ourselves, and it's very much the American way, as individualistic, everything's connected. You even cited one of my favorite books, which is The Hidden Life of Trees.
Oh, it's so good, isn't it?
Beautiful, because it shows how everything is connected. This seemingly separate thing is connected to everything else through the mycelium complex. And there's this massive thing. In quantum resonance fields, we're all connected through a field effect. There's nothing that's separate. And as much as I want to make the separation between this highly dysfunctional person that I've judged as highly dysfunctional or whatever it is, I have a central philosophy. You'll find it in my course called Creating Cultures of Belonging. And the central philosophy is mirror philosophy. I don't live in the world. I live in the mirror. Everything is a reflection of me, and everything is connected to me. And that, for me, was... You and I had this conversation before. I don't have coaches on my show. I'm not interested in having coaches. But you and I have this connection around this understanding that this is not about coaching. That's the practical tool.
A very human act of being human.
It's an act of being human. And as an article I've just written and released beginning of the new year, which was that the future in an AI revolution is very simply more human-centric. If we don't get more human-centric in an AI revolution, we're going to do ourselves in. And that is what all Michael's work is about. And I want to encourage you to understand that. It's about bringing us back to this deep humanity around those 3 principles. Again, Michael, please, the 3 principles.
Best possible relationships should be safe, and they should be vital, and they should be repairable.
Safe doesn't mean you're mollycoddling each other. So, by the way, safe means when people ask me about conflict with my bride, I tell them I hate conflict, and I'll step into it at every possible opportunity. Why? Because I know the consequences of not having it are much more painful.
Yeah.
Right? It's like that willingness to go into that. It's not, oh, well, I don't want to upset you. Fragility is not emotional safety. The emotional safety means I'll listen to you, even if I think you're crazy, because I might discover that maybe I'm a little crazy. That first piece around that safety, then the vitality. Listen, if you want to know what a dead relationship looks like, you've had them. You probably got divorced from one. You probably away from a best friend. And why? Because you went, oh, it's dead. Like nothing's going on.
Yeah.
And if you've got a best friend, it's somebody you conflicted with. It's vital. It's alive. It's vibrant. And you came to a greater understanding of each other through the conflict, the vitality of it. And because of that, you wanted to repair it. Well, we had this and I didn't get it, but and now I understand you better. This is great. My best friend comes over all the time. And my wife says, how so long have you been friends? We've been friends for more than 30 years. We talked about these great stories we had. And she said, what's the toughest one you've had? And I said, being this close to his nose and wanting to punch him in the face. And him saying to me, I know you really want to punch me. And I go, I so want to punch you. I didn't, but I wanted to because he pissed me off so much. But that's one of my best friends in the world. It's vital. It's repairable. And we've kept repairing it deeper.
Every relationship that matters will go off the rails. So you've got a choice as to go, oh, well, it's broken and diminish and less than. Or you got a chance to not just repair it to get it back to where it was, but have you know that weird phenomena that in retail, that if you screw up, but you do a really good job at fixing the error, people are 10 times more likely to recommend you and your brand.
Isn't that beautiful?
They should build that into the process. We should deliberately make this screw up and then fix it brilliantly so we get more brand referrals. I think it's the same with when you are brave enough to repair a relationship that matters. It actually makes it a deeper, stronger relationship because you've committed to the sense of we're going to work through this messy, hard thing because we're both committed enough to it to actually say, how do we get this back to where we were? And you actually get further down the path together.
I fully agree. Michael, this has been a pleasure and honor, sir. Always is a pleasure and honor talking to you. Before we go away, I want you to make sure that people know where to find you, where to find out more about the book and all of your books and all of your resources. So please tell people where they can find out more about you.
So if you're interested in the book itself, bestpossiblerelationship.com is the website for that. You can get downloads of the 5 questions. And there's also a video of me actually having a Keystone conversation. So if you're like, yeah, but how does it work? Well, you'll see that at bestpossiblerelationship.com. And then for more generally, for the other books and for finding me on social and the courses and stuff that we offer, the website is mbs.works, mbs.works.
And again, thank you so much, Michael. It's been a pleasure and honor. And of course, we'll make sure that we post all of those links on the show notes, and you'll find out wherever you can connect with Michael and all of his amazing work. However, now we're at the end of the show, and I want to say, those who control the meaning control the tribe. And those are the ones who control the movement of the tribe. Leaders committed to positively shaping the political and business landscape know they've got to tap into what drives human behavior, and that is extracted from the emotional source code. If you really want to understand how to shift the behavior of your organization, of your tribe, I'm Dov Barron. I show businesses, teams, and leaders how to harness their emotional source code to move their tribe. Because unified, actualized meaning is the monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for all individuals and companies. Remember, we need your help in staying relevant, so please go to wherever you go to listen to this show and do us a favor, rate, review, and share the show. And a big thank you to you if you are a regular listener. It really makes a difference if you do those rates and reviews. We really appreciate it. It really does help. Thank you so much. Till next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about how you're in that drama triangle, how you can get out of it, how you can use the 5 questions that will bring about a deep, connected relationship, how you can have your best possible relationship with anyone you meet, And remember, the best possible relationship doesn't mean this is going to be your best friend. It means it's going to be the best possible relationship you can have with that person, but you are responsible for that. Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious. I'm Dov Barron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level: clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, in your life, and in your leadership impact. And I am out.